And welcome to my weather world here at KCRA Studio A, and I'm sitting here at the weather pod, and we're going to talk about obviously something associated with the weather. It's kind of an interesting topic today. I need your questions. That's something that always helps out, and I got a great question that was sent in to me. In fact, let's go ahead and get started right away. We're going to talk about the question that was sent in. This was sent in by Lonnie Gerber. And the question is, why do we see lots of contrails on some days and then nothing on others? So some days we have contrails, those lines of clouds that can cover the sky, and other days we don't see anything out there. Skies are clear, even though the planes are still flying around. Well, the word contrail is just a shortened word for condensation trail. Condensation, of course, is when we have water vapor, which is invisible. You can't see water vapor. When it changes to a liquid and it forms little tiny droplets that you can then see, and that's what clouds are made of. Clouds are made of condensation. They have the little tiny water droplets that are floating around. And there's two processes that are taking place when we have this condensation. We have a decrease in temperature, which can cool the air, so the water vapor then will cling to little particles that are in the air floating around. And the other one is just an increase of water vapor, or increasing that condensation nuclei, or those little tiny particles that the water vapor can cling to. So those are the two processes that take place when a condensation trail can form. Now, it's not always the same process, so let's kind of break them down. The first process is a decrease in temperature. You may have heard the term dew point. Well, that's the temperature that needs to be reached for condensation to occur. Now, as a plane is flying, and usually these jets are flying up over 20, 30,000 feet. The air temperature is extremely cold. And on the tips of these wings, as well as the tail, you have these vortices. What's vortice? A vortice is a swirling area of air, and these come streaming. If you've ever been on a boat and seen a boat, it creates a wake that you see coming off of the boat. There's a wave associated with that. Well, it's the same thing with an airplane, but it's not a wave in the sense that we think of like an ocean wave. It's actually a swirling area of air that's coming or trailing behind the plane. And so you have the tips of the wings and the tips of the tail all create these vortices. In the center of these vortices is low pressure. The swirling air actually creates low pressure that in turn actually cools the air inside of those vortices. And as the air cools, the temperature is reached where we have condensation that begins to form, and therefore we have contrails that can form. And again, as a plane flies by and you can see those clouds forming at the tips of the wings or the tips of the tail, it's the contrail that's forming that, and the air that's swirling around, the wake of that plane that's creating the low pressure that creates the cool temperatures that then forms the condensation, and then we get the clouds. But there's another process that takes place, and this has to do with the jet engines. The engines are hot, and they are streaming, spewing out exhaust. And the exhaust that comes from these engines is just heated water vapor, as well as other particles and chemicals that are involved in that. But the things that we're interested in is the increase in water vapor and those particles that help droplets to grow. And what happens is that hot stream of exhaust comes out of the engine. As it tapers off from the plane, it starts to cool, and then we get condensation that forms as that mass of water vapor and the particles, they cool, they condense, and you get the formation of the cloud. Now, what's interesting and what's different about this formation is that it doesn't happen right as the exhaust comes out of the engine. It actually happens farther away from the plane, and so you'll actually see that cloud forming after the plane goes along. Then you see the cloud forming behind it, unlike those condensation trails that form at the tips of the planes, the wings and the tail. So there's a little difference between the two, but it's the same process that's going on. It's just different things that are creating that process. So let's go ahead and explain this a little bit more by going over to do some demonstrations. Let's go over here to our demonstration table. And as we go over here, I have just this little thing for effect. That's actually not how a contrail forms, but it's kind of neat to see, and you've got the smoke that's coming from it. But the first process that we're going to talk about is those vortexes and the cooling of the air. Now, for that to take place, of course, you need to cool that air through swirling air. And I'm not going to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do is, this represents my vortice, this cup here. And I am going to pour in some water. Right there. That is our water vapor. Even though it's liquid, in this demonstration, it represents water vapor. Next, we want to cool it down. And how am I going to cool that down? Well, I have with me, let me get into it here. Not only ice, this is actually called dry ice. And dry ice is actually carbon dioxide that is now a solid. Carbon dioxide is something we exhale as we breathe. It's a gas that's in the air all around us, but this is its solid form. And when I put this in the water, look what happens. It's cooling the temperature of the water, it's creating lower pressure, and it's also creating, this is water droplets that are coming out of my cup here. So in a sense, we can consider this to be kind of like a contrail. What's happening is you have the vortex, that would be the glass, you have the lowering of pressure, and you have the cooling that's going on inside this glass, creating the condensation, the cloud, that's coming out in the form of this here. And so you can see the droplets of water that are forming that cloud as it comes out of the glass and across the table. The other way to do this, it's going to be a little bit more effort here, is we're going to take some water. I'm going to put it in here. This is our water vapor again. I don't want too much. We're going to fill this with water vapor. In fact, I think I want to take a little bit out. Not too much. There we go. And then we have, to make the particles, the exhaust. And so look what we have for that. We have a little match here. We're going to quickly light this and put it in there. It's going to go out and it's going to create smoke. So we get smoke in here. But you can see right here, you actually can see right there, there's a little bit, you can see it a little hazy. So what I'm going to do now is to put this plug on here. Move this out of the way. Move this out of the way. And as I increase the pressure inside here, it should actually clear up the air. Because when I increase the pressure, it increases the temperature. And that should actually decrease the water vapor from changing from a vapor to a liquid. But as I decrease the pressure really quickly, look what happened. We've got the cloud that formed. Look at this, we can make it go. There's the cloud. We can do that one more time. Let's see if we can make it disappear. Again, we increase the pressure. We heat the air. So there it is, heat it up. You can see, now watch the bottle as it forms smoke again, and then we can, there's our smoke. That's our contrail. So those are the two methods of forming a contrail. You got the cooling of the air from the vortices that trail behind the plane. You also have the jet exhaust that will create a contrail as well. As that exhaust cools, it has the particles that are in the air, has an increase in water vapor that creates the contrail. So now we actually come to answering the question of why some days you see the contrails and some days you don't see the contrails. Well, the reason why, it has to do with the availability of water vapor that's in the air and also the temperature of the air. When you have a colder air mass that's in place, you have more instability and you're going to have the chance for contrails to form. And when you have a warmer air mass, you're not going to see that. So when we have high pressure, when you look at the weather map and there's a big H sitting over California and it's a really big, strong, high pressure system, you're usually not going to see as many contrails than when there's a weather system moving in with low pressure. That's going to make it a little bit more unstable. And another thing you have to keep in mind too is the atmosphere is always changing and it's always moving. And so throughout the day, there may be the morning where you see contrails, in the afternoon you don't see contrails. You might see clear skies in the morning and in the evening you have contrails. And so it depends because the atmosphere is always changing, it's always moving, you have different stabilities of the atmosphere. And a more unstable atmosphere is going to create more contrails. Where you have in the upper atmosphere a more stable environment, you're not going to see the contrails. And so it all is a matter of how much water vapor is available and what the temperature and pressure is that's over your area. So that's going to change from day to day, and so that's why you have that change in the contrails. But there's always planes flying overhead, and so there's always that chance for contrails to form. So that hopefully answers the question. But what I need more questions to help me answer. So I need your help with that. Go ahead and get online, and you can email me at dverdorn@hearst.com, and that way you can contact me and let me know what your question is, and that way we can actually learn together, because this is a great way to learn. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope we did all learn something this morning, and hope you have a wonderful day today. And always ask questions. Never stop asking questions, because that is how you learn.